And here we are back out in the greenhouse. This is the cucumber plant that I cut the bejesus out of the other day. I removed most of the rotty stuff on it, and it's got multiple fruits on it, which we'll have to see if they make it, as in grow up to be cucumbers. But there's probably 6 or 8 cucumbers on here right now. So I'm crossing my fingers on that one. They seem to be doing okay. And time will tell. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and I'm going to start pulling off tomatoes that are close to ripe, or ripe. So some of these were just barely starting to turn a little bit the other day. Now they're looking more tomato-like. So I'm not going to totally twitch about this and try and get every single one, but because I know these are going to take a while longer to ripen. But I'm hedging my bets. I am making believe that we could lose the heater at any time, and that I just don't want to lose more tomatoes than I have to. So I'll be going through the various tomato plants and seeing what we have. Now the other day when I was in here, these were not even sort of ready, but I'm seeing a couple now that are, which is great, because we really love these red robins. Very delicious. And let me also check in here. These are the canary yellows. I've got a bunch of them in the kitchen right now, so I'll only take the ones that are really ripe. Both of these plants have a lot of green fruit on them, so theoretically we could still get a lot more out of here. Now, one of the reasons that I want to really keep up with this, other than the concern about losing tomatoes, is that a bunch of these are determinants, and that means that they will mostly come off within a couple of weeks. And as soon as they have mostly come off, I am going to get rid of the plants. There's no reason to be watering and taking care of these guys. Oops, now that tomato just fell off. So even though it's not ripe, it'll ripen in the house. It's not a problem. And since we've already completed our taste tests, I'm not going to worry about flavors on things. We've made our decisions for next year. We know what we won't grow for sure. So now the big question, of course, becomes what we will grow. I need to check my records. I grew Bella Rosa a couple of years in a row. I was very pleased with their production. They are a determinant, so they tend to come off pretty much at all at once. But they came in waves, so it wasn't quite as overwhelming as some varieties can be. And I'm trying to think whether I grew Invincible or not. There's a little synapse in the back of my head that says I may have, and they did better for me outside than they did in here. But I am going to pick off a lot of these partially ripe tomatoes, just in case, and just not worry about it. We've got a good quantity of tomato sauce in the cupboard already. I'm not concerned about running out of tomato sauce, but if I can put up another 6 months worth of tomato sauce or something like that, that's fine with me. We don't use a huge volume of tomatoes in our cooking. I mean, some households you go to and virtually everything that they make has tomatoes in it. That is not us. So it's not as critical for us as it would be, say, for a large Italian family that regularly has big family dinners. So, and serves lots of pasta with tomato sauce. You know, that's not us. So I just want to be conservative in terms of not losing tomatoes that I don't need to. I heavily picked these guys in the back here last week, I guess it was, or earlier this week, last weekend, I don't know. It all becomes a blur after a while. And but there's still quite a few tomatoes in here that are completely green. So basically, these orange ones, and some of these are actually ripe. I'm loving how pretty the nasturtiums are. Last year we wound up with calendula in here over the winter accidentally. And it was so incredibly cheerful. It could be the worst weather on the face of the planet outside, and you'd come in here and the calendulas had flowers all over them. It was just amazing. And calendulas are perennials, and they're pretty tough little beasties to start with. But just a little bit of cover that the greenhouse gave them meant that they lasted in here and bloomed all winter. That was just too much fun. So I haven't decided if I'm going to try and bring my bucket of calendulas back in here. I have a bucket in the yard. I'd planned to plant them out into the garden this summer, and it just didn't happen. But I kept them alive in one of these black buckets on irrigation in the yard. So technically speaking, I might be able to clean them up and bring them back in here. These basil are finally starting to look rotty. And what I think happened is I think that they got a little bit burned from the frost. Fortunately, I harvested, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I harvested some of the stuff off of these plants and some of the stuff off the plants in the yard. And they're all sitting in a container of water on the counter at home, in the house, in the kitchen, so that we have more tomatoes for caprese, more basil for caprese salad, because obviously we have plenty of tomatoes. And I would say that the Thai basil is done now too. I need to also harvest the potatoes and sweet potatoes in the yard, because they are done. Some of that is up against the plastic, which is never a good idea. So let me clean up a little bit more in here now. I don't think these guys are going to come back. I think they've got too much damage. But I'm going to trim off some of the big stuff on them. It's definitely burned with frost. I think it's so hysterical that the nasturtiums, which I think of as being very fragile, have done great, and the basil hasn't done as well. That's interesting, because I would have put them at the same level in terms of susceptibility to frost, but they're obviously right next to one another. In fact, they're actually entwined in a couple of spots, and yet the basil is the one that looks awful, and the nasturtium is still blooming. So microclimates can be the thing. This is also a type of basil I haven't grown before, so it's possible it's just more sensitive, or maybe the nasturtium is not as sensitive as I thought it was. But yeah, I think of nasturtium as being something that turns into mush when it gets frosted, and yet these nasturtiums look just fine. So I'm just going to trim this back a little bit to reduce the volume of vegetation in here. If the vegetation at the bottom was completely untouched, I would not trim it back, because the outer leaves and top leaves a lot of times can protect the stuff that's inside. But there's a sprout down here that I was hoping might make it, and it looks just as burned as the stuff that's up here. So we'll see. Like I say, we're expecting some, I don't want to say warmer, but more temperate weather for a little bit here. But then I'm seeing another polar vortex kind of thing coming down out of Canada. So I suspect we're going to slide solidly into the 20s and stay there at night pretty quickly. It is that time of year. These are my peppers. This guy is Godfather. I don't know if he has one pepper on him. Yeah, he's got one pepper left. The Mamma Mia Rosso has a ton of peppers on her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And these are nice big ones. So It's not one of those, oh, look, it's a pepper. If you look with a magnifying glass, you can find it. No, this is a pepper. And these guys are pretty toasty. Pretty toasty. I love the smell of Thai basil. I did not use it much at all this summer, which is kind of disappointing. It was just the weirdest summer. We didn't wind up cooking a lot of the things we usually cook and all kinds of strange stuff. It was here. It was a total joy to smell, to brush into, to well worth the amount of effort it took, which was pretty much nothing other than starting a few seeds. I like to have different kinds of brassicas in here all winter. So that means broccoli and cabbage and kohlrabi. I will not grow Brussels sprouts this year. We have yet to have good luck with them, and maybe one of these days I'll try again, but I wasted a lot of time and effort on them last year, and last year is not the first time I've ever failed at them, so sometimes you just have to say, not this year. I think that's a good start. Oh, I have a weird thing to share. So, one of the things that we did not get as much off over this year as we had wanted to is our squash, because they went in late, they had all kinds of issues, but we did start getting some really beautiful yellow zucchini to come off. The last thing we wanted to do was lose it, so I said, well, I am going to try triple covering it, which I have done before. It has a layer of the lightweight row cover like you saw me use last year, which is, yeah, here's the row cover I used last year in here on some things when it was going to get really, really cold. And I've got a layer of that, then I have a layer of greenhouse plastic, and it's not new, fancy, wonderful greenhouse plastic. It's really old greenhouse plastic that Henry's mom gave me like a million years ago. It's been probably used 20 times. But we just keep reusing any pieces that are large enough to use. And it's got that on it, and then on top of that it has another layer of this. And believe it or not, despite the fact that it has been down to 26 degrees outside, the golden zucchini in the yard has survived and is still producing fruit. So, we're going to see what we can do with it. That is one of the things that I totally delight in, when you manage to like really cheat on something like that. So we're going to keep trying to cheat as long as we can and see what we can get out of there. I did see that there's some rodent damage on one of the small fruits, which I was not happy with, and I need to probably set a couple of traps out there. I am pretty darn pleased with this. I would say that several of these plants are going to be done within 2 weeks. And like I say, I need to get some brassicas planted. Probably going to start them in the dining room, as much as I hate that, just because it's easier. So, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because obviously we have stuff happening. And to be able to say that it is almost the end of October, and it was 32 when I got up this morning. And we still have tomatoes coming off in the greenhouse. We still have zucchini coming off in the yard. I have sweet potatoes and stuff like that I need to harvest in the yard. Not bad, especially for what I feel like was a very uncoordinated year this year. So it has been a success. The experiments worked. Was it perfect? No, but it was a lot better than not having a garden, which would have been what happened if we had planted everything outside. We had a very small crop of green beans this year. They were decimated by the rodents. I still got a couple meals worth. I have a lot of green beans still in the freezer from last year, so I'm not too concerned about that. And we'll be switching up to brassicas hopefully in the next month or so. My thyme is doing well over here. It's got 3 nice little clumps kind of over there. It's nothing to look at. I mean, it's thyme, you know, but it's doing a lot better. It really stalled earlier, and I think that was because it just needed more fertilizer than it got. But as soon as I gave it a little bit, it seemed to perk right up. So my plan is at this point to keep that through the winter in here, because it is cold hardy, and even if it kind of dies back a little bit, it should come back. But it probably won't die back being protected in here, as long as we keep it watered. We're getting ready to break down the summer watering system here because it's getting too cold at night and we're risking breaking pipes. So we'll be switching the plants in here to an indoor system running off the 3 barrels down there. It should be interesting because I think it's going to work just fine. I don't see why not. So, yeah. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Obviously, we're going to be doing lots more. And don't forget to brainstorm, because, you know, if we hadn't been willing to brainstorm, we would never have even tried any of this, and we wouldn't have had anything in terms of a garden this summer. So, until next time, bye. Oh, and sorry for the fan, but I can't not run it. I would melt.